After teasing it for weeks and revealing as much behind-the-scenes content as I possibly could, I'm excited to announce that my short documentary, Earth at Play, The Art of Pottery with Anna Feldman, is out on YouTube. Today, we're diving into everything else that I didn't cover. I'm taking you on location. We're talking about music, lighting, post-production. I'm pulling back the curtain on exactly how I made Earth at Play, The Art of Pottery. One of the first items that I choose in my production arsenal is music. And I know that's not how most filmmakers do it, but it's how one of my cinematic icons, Ken Burns, approaches all of his productions. In fact, music is so integral to how he produces films that he commented on it during the 1994 production of Baseball. We go in before we begin cutting and lay down dozens of versions of tunes, and then we actually edit to the music rather than vice versa. I think that gives the films of Ken Burns a deeper emotional anchor than many other films on TV, and that's also why I follow this process. So I waited until I had the proper soundtrack to lock in the picture. If you've seen the film, I want to point out that the track you're hearing underneath all of this is by a band called Voyager, and it carries a tremendous amount of the emotional weight of the entire film. Without the music of Voyager, I probably wouldn't have had this particular cut. I encountered their work first on Bandcamp earlier last year, but I was excited to find this track, Shelter, on my music licensing platform, MusicBed. And the funny thing is, everybody talks about how awesome Epidemic Sound is, and I don't disagree because I also have an Epidemic Sound subscription. But I spent nearly a week attempting to score this film using music from Epidemic Sound, and after a few unsuccessful attempts, I decided it was time to give MusicBed a shot. And what I encountered was a large, emotive collection of music that felt like it was made for filmmakers and not just for licensing in general. Because if you're not hearing the right thing, and in the correct emotional headspace, what you see on screen won't matter. The unspoken rule of music licensing is that some companies are better at certain styles than others, and in this case, I feel like MusicBed really hit it out of the park, and I'm excited to be working with them as my exclusive music provider for this next year. And if you're feeling similarly inspired listening to the track playing underneath us right now, I want to give you a chance at MusicBed for free. Go click the link in the description down below. It'll give you 1 month of free access to the MusicBed subscription. And I hope you stick around. It took me several different tries to land on the track that I eventually picked for this piece. Kudos to MusicBed for having such a huge and emotive collection of music, and for introducing me to the film work of an artist I already knew. That's pretty cool. The next topic is lighting, and to be honest, I did very little lighting on this project. I took my Aputure Amaran 200XS and my Godox softbox with me on location, and we ended up using the hard light source most of the time. In this opening shot, you'll notice there's a bit of a hair light coming from picture right, and that is my Aputure Amaran 200XS just out of frame, firing through the back window of the studio. The goal was to make it seem as though Anna was lit entirely by natural sunlight. But when I looked at the overall scene, I realized that the light hitting her hands and the light hitting her face were much too different in intensity. And so, to make it easier, I flagged off the upper part of the window and lit her face using the spotlight from the other side. I wanted to pull her off the background while not making it seem unnatural, and I like the effect here. I probably could have took a few more lights with me, but I was limited by space in the studio, as well as what I could fit in my Pelican Air case. I also think this confirms that you can travel light and still produce a film that is visually stunning. One light and one softbox was enough to take care of everything we needed on set that day. Now granted, we were in a small space, and there wasn't much room to set up many other lights. But it got the job done, and it looks great. The other use I had for the light was for the scenes at the pottery wheel. I found that it was difficult to bring Anna and the project she was working on off of the background, even though we had a fair bit of visual compression in the scene. So to aid with visual separation, I placed the spotlight across the studio from the camera, just outside the door, and aimed it across the edge of the project. Admittedly, it's a very subtle effect, but I think without this light, the scene wouldn't be half as dynamic. The last lighting setup is probably the easiest. I brought my light inside the studio, set up my 37.5-inch softbox, and aimed it just above where I proposed our first camera angle. Later on, I would move the camera and film some other scenes outside of the studio. By placing the key light on the side of the sun, nearest the existing source, I was able to easily recreate the interview shots, moving the camera and reshooting takes seamlessly in a way that you'd probably never even know. The last item I want to talk about is post-production. And this is one area where I'm not afraid to admit I made a mistake. The night before the shoot, I had been tinkering with tungsten white balance on my FX3. I unfortunately left that white balance setting in place when I went to shoot with Anna the following morning. What resulted was a number of early shots coming out with a deeply blue tint. Fortunately, I was shooting in ProRes RAW, and it's possible to recover white balance. One other item that I'd like to mention, and this is merely an observation, not a complaint, is that noise reduction in ProRes RAW workflows has to happen in post. I feel like this is something relatively normal to stills photographers, but if you've been in a video-first workflow most of your career, you might find it a bit jarring. So make sure that you have a powerful computer and a great noise reduction algorithm. I'll be testing out a few in a later video. That's it. Music, lighting, sound, pre- and post-production. We've covered the entire gamut of how I created Earth at Play, the art of pottery. This won't be the last production on my channel, and I hope you'll stick around because I have plenty more content coming for you in the next few months. Filmmaking tutorials, investigative documentaries, and anything that I think will help me and you stay curious.